Hi, I'm Rita. Welcome back to my YouTube channel, Life Worth Reading. Today I'm going to be walking you through the 9 books that I read in October. Now, October was a really bad month for me. Personally, it was something that I look forward to forgetting, quite honestly, and I'm so glad that the month is finally over. And reading wise, it also wasn't great. There were a lot of books I didn't really enjoy this month, so this might not be the most positive of wrap-ups, unfortunately, but I am going to be walking you through all the books that I read, and I'm going to be telling you about them. The ones that I didn't like, I'll tell you less about them because I really don't need this to be a really negative video. But without further ado, let's just discuss every single book that I read in October. I'm going to be really honest. Out of these 9 books, there are actually 2 DNFs in here, so I think I'm going to discuss those first. The first one is the less interesting one. It's a book called Embers by an Hungarian author named Sandor Marai. This is a book that I had on my physical TBR for a long time now. It was a Portuguese translation. It's this book that was written in the beginning of the, not really the beginning, but like during the, like after the war, during the 20th century. And this book is about a man, like a military general, who many years later, during his old age, reconnects with someone who used to be a friend of his and who became like sort of an enemy to him. And I just found this book to be really boring. There's really not much to say about this one. It was just a slug to get through. It could have been the translation's fault. Sometimes when I read books that are translated, I never know if I should fault the author or the translator. Honestly, I shouldn't fault anyone because I didn't like it, but everyone has their own opinions, and this was just a book that during the specific time where I was trying to read it, it just really wasn't working for me, and I think that that's totally fine, and I just ended up DNFing it and unhauling it and just moving on with my life, which is the best thing that you can do when you're not enjoying a book. Now, if I didn't have beef with this first book that I DNF'd, I definitely have some with the second book that I DNF'd. This was really bad. I'm talking about The Familiar by Leigh Bardugo. Now, I feel like I need to preface this by saying that I love Leigh Bardugo. I really wanted to love this book. I had no ill intent towards it. I didn't think I was going to be disappointed by it. I just really, nor did I have like amazing expectations for it. I just thought that the story sounded interesting. I usually love Leigh Bardugo's writing, and I thought that those would mesh well to create a book that I would thoroughly enjoy, even if it didn't become a favorite of mine. But what I actually got was something that really didn't work for me, and I just thought again that it was very boring. I thought that we were like thrown in the midst of a book, which sometimes works and sometimes doesn't, and I feel like in this time it really didn't, because I just didn't connect with our main character. I didn't know who she was. I didn't know what she wanted, what her motivations were. Lucia to me as a character was someone that was very mysterious, and not in the best way. I just didn't know what she wanted out of life and what she was trying to achieve. Quite honestly, she was a very confusing character for me to follow. Her motivations were very strange to me, and I just, the thing that I will say the most is that I didn't care about what happened in this book, and I feel like that's the most troubling, because that's why I DNF'd it. It was like, I'm not enjoying this book. I'm actively not enjoying this book, but I also don't care about anything that is going on in this book. I don't care about what these characters are trying to do. I don't really care about the story. When the love interest was introduced, I was really not feeling it. I just cannot tell you a single thing that I liked about it, and I did read like 120 pages of this book, so I gave it, in my opinion, a fair shot. I read a third of the book, and I just really didn't like anything that was going on in this book. So that was honestly, I think, my biggest disappointment of the year, because I really thought that I would enjoy this book. I wanted to enjoy this book, and I just didn't like a single thing about it. Will that make me not want to read Leigh Bardugo anymore? No, because I usually love her books so much. I feel that she's an amazing author, and just because this one didn't work for me doesn't mean that other books that she puts out will feel the same. So I'm not giving up on her as an author whatsoever. This was just a really, really big miss for me, and I'm just ready to move on with my life. I'm ready. I feel like for this to be fair, I feel like I need to go from like my least favorites of the month, my favorites of the month. So another big, huge disappointment of mine was actually Chlorine by Jade Song. Right, I wanted to love this book. Listen, I bought the beautiful hardcover. I really, really wanted to love this book. I love a weird horror book. I love a woman-centric horror book, right? This is about our main character, Ren, who has been a swimmer since she was very young. She's this Chinese girl living in the United States. So there's also a lot of like themes of cultural identity and how to fit in, but at the same time remain yourself and remain true to yourself when you move to a place that is not very welcoming to your culture. But the writing in this, listen, the ideas were all there, the execution, again, not for me. The writing style was very wordy, it was very try hard, it didn't flow as nicely as I wanted it to. I felt like I really didn't connect with Ren as a main character, and I don't think that she was particularly supposed to be an unlikable character. She was just very unlikable to me. I didn't understand what she was trying to do. I didn't understand her motivations, her anger, her frustration. I couldn't really get on board with what she was doing, quite honestly. And then the horror parts were just very... I didn't really find them anything special. I didn't find them like absolutely crazy or anything like that. So not even the horror book could really save this book for me. And again, like, I liked the themes. I understand what Jade Song was trying to do, and I wholeheartedly agree with what she was trying to explore in this book. I just don't think that the execution, the outcome, the final product was what I perhaps wanted to read or what I envisioned, and that's okay. Like, me, like, who am I to say that this author is wrong in her vision? I just didn't really like her vision, if that makes sense. I just didn't like the execution. I would still be willing to try other books by this author, but the writing, again, not my favorite. It is a debut, so, you know, people can grow and people can change their writing style, so you never know. But yeah, as it is, not for me. I ended up giving it 2 stars. I did a buddy reading with my friend Mafalda. She also didn't really like it. She gave it like 2.5, so we were both in that same situation, and I feel really, really bad about it, but I didn't like this book. Next up, we also have like another really beloved book that I just didn't particularly like, and that is Annihilation by Jeff Vandermeer. This is book 1 of the Southern Reach trilogy. This is about Area X, which is this like area in the state of Florida, I think, that has been closed off to the general public for years and years and years, following what the government says was an environmental catastrophe. And what we follow is a team of women, like this 11th or 12th expedition into Area X, and what they are thinking of what they'll find. And it's just like, what actually is Area X, what is hidden there. Just one of those like science fiction books mixed with a little bit of horror. And again, I like the idea, I just didn't like the execution. The actual horror elements, I felt like, again, weren't exactly to my liking, weren't what I would perhaps like to read. And it just feels like I'm being negative, but genuinely, like, I hold no ill intent towards any of these books. Like, reading is something that is so personal. Just because it didn't work for me doesn't mean it won't work for you. This is a very, very popular book for a reason. People love this book. People love this trilogy. I just thought it was done very half-heartedly. I felt like we didn't explore the potential that it had. It was very short. I felt like sometimes ideas were presented that I wanted the author to explore and I thought were super interesting, and then he would focus on something else that I didn't find as interesting and put his whole focus on developing that. And so that really didn't vibe with me, because I was like, no, go back to what you were saying about this, because that's what I think would make for a really interesting development in the story. So me and this author definitely do not agree on what is the most captivating part of Area X. And the reason why I'm not continuing on is that if this was like a trilogy following the same characters and just in the same area, I would continue to read it because I want answers. This just gave me absolutely no answers. But I have read the synopsis for the second and third book, and they are following, obviously it's the same story, but we are just following different characters in different places that I don't really want to read. So this just felt like very unanswered, and I wanted more out of it and I didn't get it. So this was like a 2.5 as well. And now we are moving on to books that I enjoyed more. So let's get on to that. We are now in the 3-star range, and we have, first of all, Lapvona by Ottessa Moshfegh. Listen, I have no idea how to feel about this book. This was the most long-winded journey of my life that I've read in a book in most like recent time. This was just such a journey, and I think that I understood what this author was trying to do. Could I be wrong? Absolutely. Am I probably wrong? Absolutely. But I feel like I understood what she was trying to do. In this book, we are following Merrick, who is orphan of a mother, so he has only his father, who is a shepherd. So he is the son of this shepherd in this medieval-like village. And how do I describe this book to you? There are very gross things happening. There's a lot of like sexual content that I don't like reading about, used in ways that I definitely do not like to read about. So there are very like gross things in this book. It was kind of horrific sometimes. Like there was a lot of violence. And a lot of people, like a lot of the reviews for this book, the negative reviews for this book are, this felt very pointless. And though I agree, I think I understand. What this really reminded me of was old myths and legends. I'm not even saying like specifically like Greek myths, although that could also be it. But just the idea of fate, of religion, and of people's lives just being kind of like a circle where things just lead to other things that like, and it's like a snake eating his own tail. I feel like this is what this book was like to me. Also, it's really, really dark in here because it's just started to rain. Hold on. Is that better? Maybe that's better. I don't know. That's what I felt reading this book. I feel like we started with the character and we just had this really, really long-winded journey to where it ended. And it really did remind me of just like reading an old myth or an old like folklore tale, and the idea of people not being able to escape their fate and things just being kind of like predestined since the beginning. I don't know. It was very absurd. I didn't love it, but I also didn't hate it, even though I kind of should, because it's really, really weird and bizarre and grotesque. But some of it worked for me and I think I understood it. So that's where my 3-star comes in. I don't see myself unhauling this book because I feel like there's just something here. And I did love the writing, so I do want to read other Ottessa Moshfegh books. This is my first one, and I do want to continue on with other of her works because I really, really did enjoy the writing in this. Okay, I had to turn my ring light on. I don't know if this is better. I'm just so confused. I am not good with my own lighting. I can't tell if this is better. I'll try to edit in some color. I really don't know how this is looking, but anyway, moving on. We have 2 horror books that are strong 3.5s that are like almost rounded up to a 4, and the first one that I have is Natural Beauty by Ling Ling Huang. This is a book that I have been reading to read for a little bit now, and that my friend Mafalda very kindly let me borrow. And in this book, we are following our main character, who remains unnamed for the entirety of the book. And she was this piano prodigy when she was younger. She was in this academy, and then her parents have this really bad accident that leaves them very debilitated, and so she has to abandon her piano career, and she has to find a job at this beauty center, this wellness center named, God, I don't remember, Holistic, and things just kind of go from there. Now, I did really like the writing of this book. I love the other themes mentioned in this book. There's also a lot about, like, obviously body image of beauty industry, but there's also a lot about cultural heritage again. There's also a lot about identity, about trying to find yourself when you've dedicated so much time to a certain hobby or to doing something, and how to continue to see yourself when you're no longer doing that thing. And I did like the horror, even though I was a little bit confused sometimes, I'm not gonna lie. My only critique of this book is I feel like it tried to do a little bit too much. There were a little bit too many themes. There was a little bit too much going on, if I'm being really honest. But other than that, I feel like this was a really strong book. I cannot wait to see what Ling Ling Huang puts out next. She has a book coming out next year that I'm really looking forward to checking out. And I just had a really great time reading this book. It was such an easy and consuming read. And I don't know, I really liked it. It wasn't like an all-time favorite or anything, but I just had a good time with it. And I feel like the author knew exactly what she wanted to say in this book. I feel like she tried to say a little bit too much, but at the same time, I feel like she just served her own vision really well. And I really appreciated reading it. Next up, I read a horror novella. This is the last book that I finished in October, so it's very fresh in my mind still, and that is The Salt Grows Heavy by Cassandra Khaw. This is a horror novella about a mermaid, in a very strange definition of a mermaid, because, you know, like, every author just puts out their own vision of what a mermaid is to them. And in this book, we are following a mermaid, unnamed as well, who is accompanied by this plague doctor on a journey. And so they set out on this journey that takes him to a village where they find something very horrific, something very strange that is happening in this village, and they try to stop it. I didn't have a lot of expectations going into this book. I had never tried a book by this author before, but I was pleasantly surprised. It was very literary. I feel like a lot of the metaphors didn't really, I felt like I just lost a little bit out on the metaphors and the beautiful language. I feel like maybe I didn't understand the full purpose of this book. That's honestly totally on me and not the book or the author at all. It was very horrific. There was a lot of body horror, so it didn't really shy away from those really grotesque aspects that make the horror in this book, which I also appreciated because, well, it is a horror novella, so I really want to be creeped out and uncomfortable, and I was. But what really surprised me is that this was so beautiful and so romantic. I really was not expecting this to have kind of like a love story in it, and it really did, which was such a surprise, and it made the story so much more compelling. Like, the development of their relationship was done really well considering how short the book is and everything else that it's trying to do. And I'm still digesting it. I finished this very recently. It's still very fresh in my mind. I'm still trying to figure out how I feel totally about it, but I really liked it. I thought it was beautiful, and I had a great time with it. I feel like it's a very strong 3.5 that I could round up to a 4. But again, there were some literary aspects that I feel like I missed out a little bit on. So maybe a reread could help me figure those aspects out. But other than that, I really enjoyed it. And I feel like I want to try other books by this author too. I'm really sorry, like, the lighting changes that I'm going through filming this video, absolutely insane. Like, it just got so dark outside and it just started raining a lot, and I feel like I just lost every single light that I had. But moving on to our final 2 books, we have my 4-star of the month, which was The Little Prince by Antoine de Saint-Exupéry. This was I mean, how could you not like this book, right? This is a classic for a reason. This is a classic of a classic of a classic. This is a book that I remember so vividly reading during primary school. It was so formative in the way that I read and the way that I interact with books. I remember like our class discussions about it. I remember this book like making me think about certain things, and it was really great to revisit this book. I love that this edition still has all of the original illustrations, and I thought it was just so compelling, and I had a beautiful time with it. It really made me connect with who I was in primary school and who I was as a child, and it just really reminded me of why I love to read and why books are just so important and why stories are so important. So what a great book. I can't wait to introduce this to my own children if I have them someday, because I feel like it's such a formative experience, and it just sits so well. Like when you revisit this book, you're like, damn, like this author was really onto something. And lastly, my favorite book of the month, which was a 4.5, I have A Good Girl's Guide to Murder by Holly Jackson. I had the most amazing time with this book. These 450 pages just flew by. We are following our main character, Pip. I feel like everyone knows what this book is about, but I'll give you a general synopsis. Who is working on a final project for her secondary school, and she chooses a true crime that has happened in her town where a girl was supposedly K-worded by her boyfriend, who later offed himself. And so the case was kind of like open and shut because, you know, the perpetrator was no longer alive to be judged. It felt very just, yeah, open and shut. They were like, yeah, this guy did it, so let's just forget about it. Except that nobody was ever found of the girl. And so Pip thinks that this person who was accused is actually innocent. And so in this book, she's trying to prove that whilst uncovering a lot of the town's and people's secrets with it. It's such a classic like YA mystery story, and I'm not saying this in a bad way at all. It's just, it was so much fun. It reminded me a lot of also like Pretty Little Liars, because the more you uncover about this girl who went missing and is presumed dead, the more you think like, this is kind of like an Alison De Laurentiis kind of girl. Like, she may not be the perfect girl everyone thinks that she is. So I just had a really great time with it. I cannot wait to continue on with the trilogy. I have the 2 other books here, and I just cannot wait to read them because I had the best time reading this book. It was so compulsive, and you have to suspend your disbelief, but I also didn't think it was that horrifically unbelievable. Like, it was in a good, like in a sweet spot of unbelievable and fun at the same time, you know, but also a little bit realistic. Like, none of the things that happen in this book are that otherworldly. So I just had a really great time, and I cannot wait to continue on with the trilogy and seeing what comes next. Okay friends, so that was my reading month in October. Honestly, it was a bit of a flop reading month and a big flop personally, but I am ready for the last 2 months of the year to give me some good books, to give me some peace of mind, and I'm really ready to, I don't know, just read more and enjoy more books. I'm still trying to find new favorites of the year, so I hope that these 2 months just give those books to me because I really need it. In any case, I hope that you did enjoy watching this video. If you did, give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel for more bookish content, and I'll see you in my next video. I hope you have a nice day, and always remember that life is worth reading.